Hello everyone, and welcome to another look through of one of the classes for my DST D&D skill tree system. This is the Gish. Recently I covered the Magus, which is a very spell sword-esque, martial and caster type character, and the Gish is very similar. Magus is more of a martial character that utilizes spells to fight more effectively in martial combat, whereas the Gish is more of a spellcaster that can be a martial caster sometimes, and has all of the necessary combat utility and such to be a martial combatant, but using spells will almost always be more effective for the Gish, especially when they have slots remaining. They're not quite a full caster, but they're a bit higher than a half caster too as far as spell level goes. And I just want to bring up that this is definitely a way to fill in the lack of a bladesinger in the game. In this DST system, the wizard doesn't really have any features that allow it to be a bladesinger type character. But the wizard can always take the Gish as a subclass or multi-class it later, and then it can start picking up these features that would really help it be a bladesinger type character. And of course, if you want to go full Gish, that also works. You'll just be a more martial based character than if you were taking it as your subclass. And so, if you haven't noticed, I've had the exterior color of these videos showing kind of what the class is about. All of the blue bordered ones have been full casters or mostly full casters, and all of these oranger ones have been martial characters. But the Gish, I'm considering to be more of a caster than a martial character, even though, like, for example, the paladin was considered more of a martial character than a spellcaster, even though they both have spellcasting capabilities and both have martial capabilities. And so keep that in mind going forward. There is one more color that I'll be using, but we haven't gotten to any of the utility classes yet. And so we'll just move into Gish. Sorry for the slightly long preamble. I'm only going to be doing these on the characters that I made myself, because of course the Gish is not a character class that you can pick in D&D or Pathfinder. I made it myself. But it is kind of based off the bladesinger, so there isn't that much new, but let's get into this class nonetheless. When you take Gish as your starting class, your hit dice will be considered 2d4, and you will get Wisdom, Intelligence, or Charisma as your spellcasting modifier. You get to pick, which is super nice because it really makes the Gish, I mean, it's very customizable in what you want to do as far as your spellcasting stat. You can mix this with Bard, you can mix it with Sorcerer, you can mix it with Wizard, you can mix it with really any other full caster or half caster if you want to go that way too, or Martial. I mean, realistically, you can do whatever you want with the Gish and know that your spellcasting stat doesn't need to be worried about. So you can start Gish or you can start a different class. It's not going to really matter. What does matter is if you actually start in Gish, you will get 8 plus your Constitution modifier and hit points, 2 hit dice, proficiency in light armor, simple weapons, not martial weapons, keep that in mind, charisma and wisdom saving throws, and you get to choose 2 from Arcana, Deception, History, Intimidation, Investigation, Nature, and Religion. And then you also get the +1 caster that comes with a lot of these more caster-based classes for starting in it. And that's what you get if you start Gish. But of course, if you take Gish as a subclass or you multiclass into it later, you will also gain access to fighting spells. You gain access to the wizard spell list, and you get a +1 to your caster level. You'll learn 2 cantrips, and you are a spontaneous caster, and will gain 4 known spells from any list you have access to. So, pretty basic beginning spell list that most casters will gain access to. Notably, your caster level will be at 2 if you begin Gish, not 3 like a lot of the full casters get, because they'll get the +1 from starting, and then they'll get their spellcasting stat, which usually gives them the +2. So it's slightly lagging behind already. Keep that in mind, caster level wise. The other thing to keep in mind is that the Gish, there's a few other classes that get this also, is one of the odder classes where it gets 2 hit dice per level you take in Gish instead of the one that you usually get, 2d4 instead of like 1d8. Notably, when you have multiple hit dice, it does not actually raise the hit dice for short rests. So for example, if Gish is your main class and you have 4 hit dice, whenever you roll one of those hit dice, you would be rolling 1d4. So when you level up, you gain 2 hit dice, but the dice that you roll for that level up is still 2d4. So each one of those hit dice is a d4, basically. Of course, if you take your main class as a different class that has a higher hit dice, you'd get to roll multiple of that bigger hit dice, which makes multi-classing or subclassing Gish pretty nice. That being said, let's move to the left here first, picking up an ability score improvement, and then grabbing Limit Learner. Limit Learner gives you a +1 to your spellcasting level, and then you also gain access to the Ranger or Artificer spell list, which is nice. Not only do you get a little more caster level alongside gaining access to either the Ranger or Artificer spell lists. I'm going to move up next this direction to grab +2 to my caster level, and then pick up One with Shadows. Now, One with Shadows says that when you are in an area of dim light or darkness, you can use your action to become invisible until you take an action or a reaction. This is actually based off one of the Warlock invocations, but either way, it's still fun to have this ability, and you can pick it up pretty quickly. It's only a 5-node investment. And of course, the 6-node investment, which is the end of this path, is +2 spells known. Next up, we're going to continue moving to the left this way to grab Shifted Timing. This says that when you cast a spell, you can change the spell's casting time to 1 bonus action for the casting, provided that the spell's casting time is normally 1 action. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. This is where we start really seeing how the Gish it differs from the Magus or the Paladin or all these other half-caster martial characters. The Gish is all about mixing and weaving attack rolls and spells into the same turn. So this shifted timing really starts to show that off because, you can attack with your action, and then with your bonus action, cast a spell, because you can use your bonus action to cast a spell. Next up, we'll grab an ability score improvement, and I'm going to continue to the left this direction, picking up +1 cantrip, picking up a feat, and the beloved extra attack feature. This actually comes online 1 node later than the regular fighter's extra attack comes online. So it's actually a pretty fast access to the extra attack. That is to be said, I actually took this path first, which means that I did slow down my progress to extra attack, but of course you don't have to do that. You can go whichever direction you'd like to. Of course, the extra attack says that when you take the attack action, you can make 2 attacks instead of 1, but most people already know that. We'll then pick up a proficiency bonus increase, and then Evoking Strikes. Evoking Strikes says that you can add your spellcasting modifier to the damage of your melee weapon attacks. That's super nice. I mean, that's just like extra damage. And again, your spellcast modifier can be literally any of them if you start Gish. And if you start as a different class, it could also be Constitution, which is super fun if you're going for one of those builds. But we'll talk about those when we get to the classes that use Constitution as a spellcasting stat. But next, let's move down this path that I kind of skipped over and grab a +2 to our caster level, a +2 spells known, and then pick up Distant Strike. This says that when you use the attack action, you can teleport up to 10 feet before each attack to an unoccupied space that you can see. If you attack at least 2 different creatures with the action, you can make 1 additional attack with it against a 3rd creature. This gives you a pseudo +1 attack as long as you attack 2 creatures, which is, I mean, that's super nice. Especially with the extra mobility, you're very likely to be hitting multiple creatures. It does mean that the Gish kind of has to spread their damage out if they want to get that extra attack, because it's against 2 different creatures. But that's still super fun. And this actually synergizes really well with a different feature that you'll get on the Gish later, because it says if you attack at least 2 different creatures, which can cause some interesting combos as we get to them later. Next up, let's pick up another +2 to our caster level, and the beautiful feature that almost no half-casters get. The +1 attack. This is the only class in the game that is a half-caster, or this is more of a caster than a half-caster, but still, +1 attack is usually reserved for really martial-based characters. Yet the Gish getting it is super nice. It says that you can take the attack action and make one more attack. This can stack on top of extra attack, and it can stack on top of itself. If you have two +1 attack nodes from two different classes, you can attack two more times on top of extra attack or on top of your normal attack. Either way can cause super fun attack-based abilities to trigger multiple times per turn. I'll go down this middle path where we can pick up a +2 to our caster level, another ability score improvement. You'll note that this class actually has a lot more feats and ability score improvements than normal casters, and that's because it is got a martial base to it, which is super cool. And then pick up a feature that a lot of people have seen used on like the Eldritch Knight and the new Eldritch Knight and the bladesinger, but this is cantrip attack. This says that when you take the attack action, you're going to replace one of the attacks with a cantrip, and you may only use this feature once per turn. So pretty nice, allowing you to replace one attack with a cantrip, but it does say only once per turn, which means you can't action surge and use this twice in the same turn, or if you have 3 attacks, you can't replace 2 of them. But we'll get a buff to that later, don't worry. Notably, that this is separate from the extra attack that you can get from Gish, which means that if you get counter attack on Gish and then don't take any more levels in Gish, you can still gain extra attack from a different class and be able to utilize this feature properly. But let's move forward into these +2 to our caster level, a +2 to our spells known, and a proficiency bonus increase before we finish off this path with a 8-node commitment multi-cantra attack. This is super fun. It says that you can replace up to 2 of the attacks you make in a turn with cantrips, which means that if you take action surge from fighter, you could, attack, cantrip, or if you have 3 attacks, you could cantrip, attack. Or if you've only got 2 attacks, just use 2 cantrips. Really allowing the Gish to be one of the most flexible range-wise that it goes on the battlefield because of all the different cantrips you'll have access to, perhaps reach weapons or using something like a bow. Super fun, flavorful flexibility that the Gish has. Next up, we'll pick up a node that I think most Gishes will take as their first node that they pick up, because this is Primal Knowledge. Primal Knowledge says that you can use your spellcasting ability modifier rather than the regular ability modifier used for attack and damage rolls of weapon attacks. This is kind of a game changer for, a class that uses weapon attacks, because it means you can be very single ability score dependent. Put all of your points into intelligence or wisdom or charisma or whatever you chose to be your spellcasting modifier, and now you can, really be focused on that spellcasting and martial prowess at the same time. Next up, we'll move up this direction to pick up a +1 to our cantrips, picking up another feat, +2 spells known, +2 caster, and finishing off this path with a 7-branch commitment, we can pick up spell and strike. This is a super fun, really gishy feature which says that you can replace attacks on your turn with the casting of a spell, although doing so is rather a difficult task. You can cast a spell with the casting time of 1 action by using half the spell's levels rounded down of attacks. This is a really oddly worded ability that can combo really well with multiclassing, combos really well with subclassing, combos pretty well with some of its own features. Basically, if you wanted to cast a 2nd level spell on your turn, you could instead use 1 of your attacks when you take the attack action, because half of 2 is 1, so use 1 of your attacks. If you wanted to cast a 4th level spell, you could use 2 of your attacks. So take the attack action. If you've got +1 attack and extra attack, you've got 3 attacks. which means that you could make one attack and then afterwards use the last two attacks that you have to cast a 4th level spell. You could even cast a 5th level spell because rounded down, and half of 5 is 2.5, rounded down is 2. Again, just 2 attacks to cast that 5th level spell. And this is what I was going to say when I said that you can really combo well with that distant strike ability that allows you to take a pseudo 3rd attack on your turn, as long as you hit 2 different creatures. If you've got 3 attacks, or even if you've just got 2 attacks, you can take the attack action, use one of the attacks to hit a creature, use this spell and strike to cast a spell that makes an attack roll, and attack a different creature. And then afterwards, you'll have that additional attack that you can make against a 3rd creature. Super fun. And again, you'll be teleporting 10 feet before each attack that you make, which means that you usually will have that mobility that allows you to hit that 3rd creature. Notably, Spell and Strike works really, really well with classes that give you extra attacks availability on like cooldown, such as Action Surge, or even the Shepherd that we just talked about, how they can take their bonus action to take the attack action by spending stamina. You mix the Gish with a action surging fighter and a Shepherd that's going to use that ability as well, and you can take the attack action 3 times in your turn. If you take Dragoon levels to get bonus action surge, you could do 4 attack actions per turn, and if you have extra attack plus 1 attack, that's 12 attacks, which means that you could cast 3 level 9 spells in one turn. You can't actually do that because there's no way to get 3 level 9 spells. But just imagine the amount of destruction you can do on one turn if you dump all of your resources into casting multiple spells on a turn. It would be so cool. This, of course, is a very high-level feature. Getting all those abilities online quickly, would take a while. But it's possible, and that's what I think is so fun about this system, because you can really mix and match all kinds of classes together to provide some super strange and just off the walls, off the charts power. Let's move into the final path of the Gish. We can pick up a feat to begin it off, and then pick up Magical Resistance. This says that as long as you are wearing light armor, you gain a bonus to your AC equal to your spellcasting modifier. This basically just says, hey, you want to be a bladesinger? Here's one of the bladesinger features. And maybe that is lazy on my part, but I really like the bladesinger, so I can't deny that I took a lot of inspiration from it. We can then move into a +1 cantrip, another ability score improvement, a +2 to our caster level, and then we've got 2 options before we finish off this path with a +1 proficiency bonus increase. The one on the left here is called Casting Cleave. This says that after casting a spell, your next weapon attack within 1 minute of the casting will gain a bonus to attack and damage rolls equal to the level of that spell's cast. So, for example, if you cast a, say, 3rd level spell, your next attack roll will be made with a +3 to hit and damage, which really emphasizes and makes the Gish really want to weave attacks and spells in between each other. The whole point of casting Cleave is to really make it like, attack, cast a spell, attack, cast a spell, cast a spell, attack. Weaving these attack rolls between their spellcasting abilities, and being able to do that with things like their bonus action, and being able to replace attacks with spellcasting and cantrips can really help the Gish pull that off. Notably, Casting Cleave doesn't really work with cantrips because you'd be getting a +0 to your attack and damage rolls. When you're using Spell and Strike, it works really well, though. And so keep that in mind before we move into the other node on this path, which is Reflexive Casting. This says that you can cast a spell with a casting time of 1 bonus action as a reaction to a creature entering or leaving your range. Just a nice feature to allow you to, basically instead of making an opportunity attack, you can cast a spell. This is basically Warcaster without some of the other benefits that Warcaster has, but it also allows you to cast a bonus action spell instead of an action spell, which can have some benefits. Basically, this feature could be replaced with one of your feats by taking Warcaster, so I wouldn't be too worried about it. Casting Cleave is definitely the one over here that's really useful. And of course, we'll finish it off with the proficiency bonus increase. That's the Gish. They're actually not that big of a class. I mean, they're a little bit smaller, but they have a lot of features, and they have a lot of self-synergizing effects that synergize even better when you take more classes. Notably, they finish it off with a level 17 on their caster level. So pretty decent in general. I mean, at least 7th level spells they get to. And not only that, but they get 3 attacks on a turn, possibly 4 if they hit at least 2 creatures. And then they can use their bonus action to cast a spell on top of that. Although notably, the Gish is a smaller class than some. You can't even get to level 20 going only Gish. You can only get to level 19. Which isn't the worst, but it is a notable thing about some of these skill trees, is that there are some that are just a bit lacking as far as how far you can get main classing them, which is why the system is really built up to be a synergy engine for people to mix and match as many of the classes as they want. And so some of these classes are going to be a bit lacking as far as you can go. For example, the Barbarian can get to, I think, level 30 in just their own class, which is much higher than the 19 that the Gish can handle. That all being said, let's move into some feats that can really help Gishes out. The Gish being a caster really just means that the mana-rich, learned, ritualist, studied, all of these basic, just spellcasting feats works really, really well for them. But I do think Warcaster is one of the best. This is you can only take this one once to get the features, but it says you have advantage on saving throws to maintain concentration, and you can cast an offensive spell as an opportunity attack as long as it only targets that one creature. Like I said, their one feature can be replaced with Warcaster very easily, and I think it actually just is better. But this is a great feat to have on your Gish. Mage Training is another great one to pick up, which says that you can learn 2 first-level spells from any list you have access to, and you can cast each of them once per long rest without using a spell slot. You can also take this a second time to get its level 2 features, which says that you learn 1 second-level spell from any list you have access to, and you can cast it once per long rest without spending a spell slot. Just more spellcasting opportunity for a class that loves casting spells. Something that I think is super fun, but maybe a bit more niche depending on your build, is Shaman Initiate. This says that you learn 1 spell, choose one of the following options when you take this feat, and you can cast that spell with it always upgraded in the way you choose. And the options are to double the spell's range, or make it 30 feet depending on if it's touch probably. You can change the damage type to whatever you want. You can change the saving throw to whatever you want. Or you can increase the spell's area it affects in 5 feet in all directions. So, a really interesting ability that can maybe make one of those spells that you want to cast often be a little bit more powerful. But of course, I can't talk about the Initiate feats without going over Gish Initiate. This gives you a +1 to your Wisdom, Charisma, Intelligence, or Constitution. You get a +1 to your caster level, and you can use your weapon as a spellcasting focus. This is actually another one that I think some people are probably going to think that the Magus needs, but keep in mind that the Magus casts their spells during short rests to put them into their weapon runes. And then when they're fighting with them, they just activate the runes, which does not require a focus. So they actually don't really need Gish Initiate, but the Gish is probably going to want Gish Initiate because it means that you don't need to worry about your spellcasting focus while you're fighting. You could even equip a shield if you gain proficiency in shields somehow. Notably, this also gives you a +1 to your caster level and a +1 to your spellcasting ability modifier, most likely. So, just a great feat in general. I honestly would put this on most half-casters that use weapons, except for probably the Magus. The next one I want to talk about is Unyielding. This is a martial feat that gives you the ability to, at the end of another creature's turn in combat once per round, you can move up to 15 feet. Combine this with the Shadow Step ability that allows you to teleport 10 feet before each attack, and you are going to be extremely maneuverable on this character. But of course, if you take this again to get it at its level 2 feature, you can also, whenever you deal damage, re-roll up to 3 of your damage dice. This is damage of any kind, so this works for spell attacks and spell like ability saving throws, just in general going to boost the damage of anything you do. And on a Gish, that's super fun because you're going to be dealing damage with most of your spells anyway. Next, I'm going to bring up Mage Slayer, which might be a bit counterintuitive given that you are a mage yourself. But when you take this feat, you get the ability to, when a creature within your reach casts a spell, you can use your reaction to make a melee weapon attack against that creature. And when you damage a creature that is concentrating on a spell, that creature has disadvantage on its saving throw to maintain its concentration. You have advantage on its saving throws against spells cast by creatures within reach of you. It is a bit niche, depends on your campaign. If your campaign doesn't have very many, mages to slay, probably not the best feature, but in general, spellcasters are strong, and having abilities that specifically allow you to be effective against them is not bad. And the last one I want to bring up, and I brought this up before as well, but it's Well Armored. It says that you gain proficiency in either light, medium, or heavy armor. So you only have light normally, but you can pick up medium or heavy armor on this character if you really want to this way. And then you also gain proficiency in either light shields, or heavy shields. This is specifically light, heavy, or medium. Again, I made these extra shields. I'll put them up on the screen again. But can be useful. Can be really super useful to have the ability to bump that AC even higher with some heavy armor. And, who doesn't want a better AC? Notably, this does not work really well with the feature that allows you to add your spellcasting modifier to your armor, because you need to be wearing light armor for that to work. But it would still allow you to pick up a shield. So even if you only want this for the shield proficiency, not bad. That is all I have for the Gish. I really like the Gish. I still would say that Magus is my favorite half-caster, spellcaster type class, but the Gish also fills a niche that I think is really important in D&D. That bladesinger feeling of being like a spellcaster martial class that weaves spells in between all of their attacks. They aren't really martial focused and they aren't really spellcaster focused. They're kind of both intertwined in such a mixed manner, whereas the Magus is really all about hitting with spell strike and making their martial attacks empowered by a spell, just like the Paladin, where they want to spend all their spell slots to smite with their attacks. Whereas the Gish is all about casting spells and doing attacks. And they don't really mix them together. They weave in and out of both modes constantly. And now later we'll talk about the Polaritist, which is kind of similar, but the Polaritist is very different. All that being said, I want to say the next video that I'm putting out is going to be an overarching review, not really a review, but more of like a simplistic breakdown of every class and what it does, not really going over any of the features that they gain, but, basically saying like, oh, the Barbarian, you're all about rage. You go into this defensive and attack-based rage that allows you to do extra damage and take more hits, and all of your features are based off of empowering that mode. And that would be what I would say for like the Barbarian. And I'm going to just say that for all 40 classes so you guys can get an overarching idea of what each class does. And then what I'm going to start doing is after that video and every video afterwards, I'm going to have 3 classes, one from D&D, one from the one that I made, and one from Pathfinder, that are part of the system, and I'm going to have you guys vote on which one you want to see next in my Discord and in the comments below. And then whichever one gets the most votes is the next one that I'll cover. Just be ready for when I post that video, because that will be when the first voting will begin on what the next class will be. Either way, if you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you gave me a subscribe or a like, and just comment what you think about this class in the comments below. Do you like it better than the Bladesinger Wizard from regular D&D, or do you think it's not as cool? Tell me what you think, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Either way, thank you for watching, and goodbye.